Hi friends, welcome back with a new amazing video from Top Movies Recap. Today I'm going to recap a 2016 horror/thriller film titled Split. Spoiler warning, watch out and take care. Casey, an uninterested young lady, sits impassively in a restaurant celebrating a classmate's birthday. Claire, the birthday girl, tells her father after the celebration that having to invite her out of mercy was cruel. Casey dials her guardian's number and asks him to pick her up from the dinner. Because she was aloof and rebellious, Casey didn't fit in with any group. She didn't have someone to accompany her home. Claire's father dismisses her sentiments and waits to see if Casey can accompany her guardians home. However, her guardian's car had broken down. Claire decides to take the bus home, but her kind father insists on driving her. Claire and Casey, as well as Claire's best friend Marcia, board the automobile. While the two girls chit-chat their way to the backseat, Casey sits next to the driver's seat. When an unknown individual approaches Claire's father, he stops for the car's compartment and unloads parcels of food and gifts. A heavy thud closes the compartment and a new man steps into the driver's seat. Casey looks nervously at the man, perplexed and suspicious. Claire's father wasn't the one who did it. Claire puts the man off by telling him he's in the wrong automobile. When the man puts on a face mask and sprays a chemical on Claire and Marcia, Casey freezes. Both of the young females had been knocked out. Inadvertently, Casey tries to break free, but the man knocks her out before she can. Casey regains consciousness in a compartment with a few beams of light. Claire is embracing Marcia with trepidation. Before they can even have a meaningful conversation, the sole door in the room opens. Marcia is taken by a man with an eyeglass and a stylish appearance. It was Kevin who took on the role of Dennis. After a little moment, he returns with the wailing Marcia and groans furiously as he closes the door. Dennis wanted her to dance for him, but she peed on herself. Marcia informs Claire and Casey. Claire reassures the two others that everything will be alright as a traumatized Casey storms off to a distant childhood recollection. Uncle John, a huge man, was telling a little Casey a hunting story in a cafe. She was with her father on that particular day, and she believed nothing could possibly go wrong. Meanwhile, news of the three teenagers kidnapping spreads at a psychotherapy clinic. Karen, an elderly psychotherapist, logs onto her computer and notices that a patient called Barry has scheduled an appointment with her. Claire is telling Marcia and Casey to fight back if their captor tries to take one of them again while they are alone. Casey is logical and cautious, and he dismisses Claire's answer to the problem. Claire believes they are running out of time and that the three of them must make a terrible step towards Dennis. Given their predicament, Claire appears to believe Casey was bothersome and obstinate once more. Casey informs them that she'll help them out once she has a clearer sense of what's going on because they don't know what's going on. Casey was in the middle of the woods, sleeping in a tent. Her father accompanied her, brandishing a rifle and coaching her on how to locate and kill her victim. With a respectful knock, a man wearing a bonnet and a loose coat enters Dr. Karen's clinic. It was the kidnapper. Barry informs her that he was inspired by fashion. Dr. Karen looks through the pages of his colorful illustrations. She tries to connect with him by asking him leading questions in order to figure out who he is behind his lines. She tells a fib about his job, but he stalls her by seeming to be concerned. The spontaneous and improvised Barry began to see some indicators of a personality transformation when he moved Karen's stuff into the appropriate areas and left his doodles carelessly. He stays away from Dr. Karen's office. The girls continue to push through the little breach in the door, only to discover that their kidnapper is accompanied by a lady. The lady was conversing with Dennis, whom the girls believed to be their kidnapper's name. The lady approaches the door and pushes it open. It was Patricia's abductor, dressed in a tight red turtleneck, a long skirt, and heels. The bemused youngsters take a hesitant step back, perplexed as to why he was dressed as a lady. The lady assures them that they have nothing to be concerned about because Dennis pays attention to her. Dennis, she claims, will not malign or abuse them, nor will he close the door behind them. Dr. Karen meets with a local fellow doctor to explore the evidence of dissociative identity disorder. Karen's fellow doctor believes Karen's patients aren't out of the ordinary, but Karen has a different perspective. Dennis is having a whole conversation with a make-believe persona Marcia and Claire discover in their windowless chamber. While they're talking, a man with a pail walks into their restroom. Kevin had reverted to his Dennis persona. He goes on a rage over how filthy the restroom was and begs them to seal the door and clean it. He promises the girls that, as agreed with Patricia, he will never longer touch any of them. He explains that they will be part of a sacred feast, leaving them to wonder who will eat the three of them. Casey is awakened from his nap later that night by Claire and Marcia, who gestures to the door. The kidnapper, dressed in a yellow jacket, sits contentedly in the open door. Dennis' 9-year-old carefree and youthful ego is Hedwig. Someone is on the move, he warns them repeatedly. They had already deduced that their kidnapper wasn't fabricating his identities, The females observe how subservient and gullible he is and begin asking him questions in order to get information. Casey tries to figure out what's going on with Hedwig. The playful ego thinks she's lying. Dennis had been stalking Marcia and Claire for days, and the abduction had been planned for a long time, he says casually. Patricia and Dennis were lying to Casey, and they were preparing to send Hedwig to the sacred feast instead. She persuades him that the girls in the room are Hedwig's babysitters, willing to protect him from Patricia and Dennis, but that he must tell them how to get out right now so that they may save him as well. Hedwig returns his scornful stride to the door and shuts it. As Casey peers through the crevices, she notices Hedwig struggling with the second door's latch. The girls begin slamming drywall all over the place. Claire finds a weak area in the ceiling and uses her shoes to rip it apart. Hedwig reappears in the room, pleading with the girls to let him in. While the two budges the door against the irate Hedwig, Claire removes a section of the steel grid from the ceiling. Dennis transforms into Hedwig, who slams the door shut with all his power. Dennis yells and chases Claire down as she climbs to the top of the building and navigates her way across the ceiling. She hides in a locker invisibly, but Dennis notices her and forces her to leave the vault. Before escorting her to a separate room that he carefully locks, he asks her to remove her sweaters. He fixes the ceiling in Marcia and Casey's room and informs them that Claire will be separated from them. They must also take off their skirts and sweaters, according to him. Meanwhile, Dr. Karen is in Paris participating in a video conference with his colleagues, psychotherapists. She covers the clinical evidence from her dissociative identity disorder patients, as well as the world of possibilities for unlocking all of the identities that the brain may hold. Barry pays her a visit after the conference, but she instantly notices that he was in a different persona. Dr. Karen deceives him into believing she wants to speak with his other identities, but Barry refuses. Dennis, she assumes, was the one who took Barry's clothes. Barry emphasizes that neither Dennis nor Patricia are attempting to take control of him because they are both mentally ill and are not permitted to show their emotions in public. While Karen challenges Barry, he becomes irritated. Dr. Karen examines the CCTV footage after the session and concludes that Dennis or Patricia were acting while assuming Barry's identity. Marcia realizes that they must find a way to flee while they are still alive. Casey falls asleep in a reverie of young Casey on a hunting trip with her father and Uncle John while she is speaking. His father had just shot and killed a deer in the forest. Patricia looks after Casey and Marcia by feeding them and grooming them. She invites them out for a real supper in the kitchen because, unlike Claire, they were lovely girls. Marcia makes a daring effort to slam Patricia with a stool as Patricia is preparing the supper. Dennis takes command and orders Casey to lock herself in the room, where she discovers Marcia, who is shaking. As a punishment, he confines her to a different room. Dennis informs Casey that the beast is coming to feast on them. On another hunting expedition, Casey was peering into the woods as her father was sleeping. In front of the innocent child, her Uncle John is holding a gun. Hedwig embraces Casey from behind when she wakes up. Barry and Patricia choose who stays in the light, but Hedwig is different. Only Patricia and Dennis, he claims, believes in the beast's existence. Casey inquires whether he has ever seen the beast, as he is unsure of who the beast is and what it truly was. By asking for permission to kiss her, Hedwig diverts her attention away from the problem. She grudgingly consents to his request. After agreeing that he was a fantastic kisser, she asks Hedwig if he could smuggle her up to his room where they could dance and listen to music. Hedwig, on the other hand, is off to see Dr. Karen for Barry's appointment. Dr. Karen converses with Dennis instead of Barry during the session, inferring that his beliefs are irrational, just as Barry had stated in earlier sessions. She flatters Dennis in order to gain his trust. She reveals that if Dennis does not reveal his true identity, all of the other identities will take over the light at the same time. Dennis reveals that all 22 distinct identities made fun of him and Patricia. He was purposely modifying his behavior in order to protect Kevin, who was weak. She pushes him to explain the beast's story, which she believes is nothing more than Dennis and Patricia's imagination. Hedwig leads Casey to his room after the session, where she enters warily. Hedwig dances crazily to the stereo's loud, booming sounds. Following his dance, he gestures to his sketch window and accuses Casey of exiting through it. Dennis gives Hedwig a walkie-talkie, which he gives to Casey. Hedwig snatches back the walkie-talkie after Casey dials in and reports the incident to the man answering the recipient walkie-talkie. Casey is escorted to her room by him. Dennis appears in his typical formal attire, complete with spectacles. He explains that when the night is done, the beast will be happy. Uncle John, who is hiding behind a large rock, summons Casey, who was walking through the woods without his father. He was dressed in his birth suit when he asked Casey to undress, explaining that they were playing animal roles with no clothing on. Casey waited with a gun just above his hiding when he was finished. Casey loaded it and aimed it at Uncle John, who yanked it away from her for her safety. Dr. Karen pays Dennis a visit in the middle of the night. Dennis came to Kevin's salvage in order to impress his mother by being organized and precise. Dr. Karen assuages his anxieties by persuading him that Kevin can be rehabilitated without the 23 separate personalities. Dennis scares her away by showing her the Beast's similarities. Dennis is hesitant to elaborate when Dr. Karen describes the Beast preying on the filthy young women. Dr. Karen, unprepared and terrified, interrupts the talk to schedule a proper session. She walks to the bathroom and observes the rooms on the other side of the corridor. Claire is found in one of his rooms, but he flies her away with a noxious spray. Casey tries to open the door from the inside, while the two others bide their time until they can get out. Dennis walks to the mall to buy a bunch of flowers. On his way home, Casey walks into a room with a computer, where she discovers all of the recordings of the 23 different identities. Dennis disguises himself as the 24th identity and enters an abandoned train car. He grows in stature and mass, and his movements are more chaotic than the other 23 characters. As the fearsome Beast, he races home. Karen gets out of bed and sits at one of his tables, taking notes. With clouded vision, she stabs him from behind with a bread knife, but the blade splits into pieces. The sobbing doctor is suffocated by the Beast. After seeing the movies, Casey finds out where the keys are and secretly explores the corridors for Marcia and Claire. Marcia has already been slashed with blood in one of the rooms. When the Beast pulled Claire away and ate her organs, she was still alive in one of the chambers. Casey discovers a note from Karen, but is stunned when the Beast begins to creep up the wall. She starts murmuring his name over and over, becoming louder as she notices him deteriorate. Kevin, the original persona, takes control of the body as he recalls his cruel mother whipping him. Kevin is completely unaware of what the other personalities have done. Kevin begs Casey to shoot him with a gun hidden in a cabinet, but she pulls back for a moment. Casey sees how the kind Kevin transforms into all of the important characters at the same time. Casey hunts for the gun while Hedwig turns on the light. Casey realizes he'll soon morph into the Beast, so she dashes through the chambers, searching for ammunition. The Beast has already shifted, and before Casey can load the entire shell, the Beast grabs her and tears her sweater to shreds. She picks up the rifle from the floor and returns to her feet to close the cage. She pulls herself to the furthest corner of the jail, her calves badly injured. When Uncle John approached from behind, little Casey was sitting calmly. Her father's funeral was taking place at the time. Uncle John has pledged to look after her. She takes aim at the Beast, who darts across the dark lane at breakneck speed. She shoots at the Beast the same way she was taught to hunt. Casey quickly learns that the Beast is indestructible with only 2 bullets in her revolver. The Beast bends the bars with his bare hands, yet the wounds on her body are visible. Because of Casey's purity, the Beast takes a step back and leaves her alone. A man later enters the basement and discovers Casey's silhouette in the cage. He helps her get away from the main zoo enclosure. The policemen investigate Kevin's possession in the basement as a medical officer attends to Casey. Kevin enters an abandoned chamber, where all of the main characters simultaneously take up the light. Kevin's body is being examined for confirmation of the Beast's invincibility. A television anchor breaks the sad news about Kevin Crumb's 3 murder cases in the zoo's basement. The world of skeptics has recently learned that dissociative identity disorder is a real thing. We hope you enjoyed our video from today. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel to receive notifications of new and interesting videos.